Welcome to the Smarter Money Life podcast powered by Forum Credit Union, your go-to podcast for all things personal finance, where we break down complex financial concepts into simple, actionable steps. Whether you're looking to save more, invest wisely, or plan for your future, we've got you covered. Join us each episode as we bring you expert insights, real-life stories, and practical tips to help you live a smarter money life. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Smarter Money Life podcast. I'm your host, Andy Mattingly, and today our episode is focused on what your college student needs to know about money and the life skills they should be learning while using at college. If you let your child practice bad money habits at college, it doesn't really prepare them for life on their own. And you're not always going to be there as a backstop when they could encounter real financial problems. College is a great time to learn and use smart money skills. And I want to share with you some of the tips that some parents of current college students are sharing with their kids and what their kids have experienced in their first couple of years in school. I have several parents today who are going to share with us some of the snippets and financial advice they've given to their students and what they've encountered. So I hope you enjoy this format, and we're going to go right into listening to what some of these parents have to say about what their children needed to know and are learning about handling their money while they're in college. Well, joining me now is Ann Wiseman with a unique perspective. She has one son who's already out of college and one that's in college, and they've kind of had sort of different experiences to start with, which we'll kind of get into. But we'll start with some of the basics and we'll see where it goes. So first of all, with both of your children, did they have accounts before they went to school, and what tools were they using and those kind of things? Or did you start it once they went to school?
Both of my sons had checking accounts with debit cards at the age of 15. So learning to manage money, having a part-time job, and managing their accounts, keeping their debit cards secure, that type of thing. So they were very familiar with that before they went to college.
Now, when they went to college, did you maybe emphasize more having some of the alerts, or were they already kind of doing that?
They do the alerts as well as mobile deposit on their accounts. And of course, I have the ability to transfer money as needed.
You know, that's a point that I try to remind parents when their kids say, I don't want you on my account, and say, you know what, it's a lot easier if I'm on your account to put money in your account. And most kids will say, you know what, that's a good idea.
Definitely a good idea. And with both of my sons, we got them a low limit credit card when they went to school for emergency expenses, for fuel, things like that.
Yeah, and you know, that's a good point, because that also helps them start building credit. And it can either be an authorized user or it can be a share secured. There are different ways you can do it, but it's a great emergency tool, but it also helps them start building credit really early. And Definitely. I think that's been beneficial to your older son. Let's talk about Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, or Apple Pay, whatever. What did you talk to them about that when they first started using it, and then especially when they went to college?
We're a big Apple family, so we definitely use the Apple Pay. Both sons were familiar with using it, but it's one of those things that we talked about. Make sure that you pay it off monthly when using that, and to be aware of what you're spending, because you don't always see it.
Yes.
When you just use the Apple Pay, but it does have that convenience factor. Both primarily use Venmo.
Okay.
Venmo's how they transfer money to friends, or friends transfer to them when they order pizza or buy tickets to something. So Venmo is the primary preferred app for my family.
Do you encourage them, or did you help them set up a spending plan, or how did they make sure that they have money? And I know kind of two different experiences you were sharing before we started, was that one never lived in a dorm, so they kind of had to think, your youngest kind of had to think about food and all of that right from the get-go.
Yes. We did not have the benefit of a meal plan due to off-campus housing. So we did have to have a discussion fairly early on about how much they were spending on food. We set a little budget limit of, things that you can fix in your kitchen, as well as how many times you can eat out during the week. So we kind of set a limit that way. And then I have an automatic transfer to his account biweekly. So he kind of knows how much money is in there for the 2 weeks. He does have the credit card for additional expenses. Sometimes there's a class certification test that needs to be taken. So that goes on the credit card. So he knows if he wants to do something special outside of that, that it comes on his money. Both my sons had on-campus employment to help earn money while they were going to school.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's really nice because you've really set up for them kind of a 2-week spending plan if they want to follow it, unless they want to get into their own. And so that's great. It's kind of like that zero-sum budget. When it's gone, and then you have to start dipping in somewhere else. So that's really good. 2 sons, was there anything different in like how they managed their money that you had to do differently, or are they somewhat alike in how they manage their money?
They are not alike. One saves very, very well. The other spends money faster than he can make it and has expensive taste. So we definitely talk about saving. Both of my sons had a Roth IRA when they started working, and they know that a certain amount of money comes out of their account every month in saving for their future.
That's great. Now, what do you view as, like, for your son that graduated, what did he learn about finances that you feel like has really helped him as he's moved into his adult life?
Well, he bought his first home right after finishing grad school, and I think he really had to look at numbers when he looked at income versus what the expenses would be. It's one thing to share rent and utilities with others, but when it's all on your own, definitely looking at the numbers on that, made a difference in how much house can I afford, what kind of a payment can I afford, what kind of rent can I afford.
And I think that's kind of an amazing story that I want to make sure our listeners realize. It's like he bought a house, and a lot of kids aren't able to do that. But what he learned in school and what you got him to do with building his credit, and that made it very possible for him to, like, there's not many students that can buy a house once they finish grad school, to have the credit score and to have that kind of financial acumen to really do that. So that's the importance of teaching them good financial habits while they're in college, and not letting them have bad financial habits that they come out and then they can't do those things. Is there anything else that you think parents of kids that are in college or heading to college should talk about with their kids about finance, or any final thoughts that you might have?
I think just being aware, of what you're spending. If you have a vehicle, don't just loan it out. There's repercussions to those type of things, to watch your valuable items, watch your wallet, watch your credit cards, pay off everything monthly that you can, so that you do build that credit for later.
Great. Well, Ann, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great information. And interestingly, as we talk to different people, it's a few different things. So I think we've got a lot of tips we're putting out here for our parents. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
So joining me now is Brian Crum, who has a son that's going to be a junior this year. And Brian will have some great experiences to share with us, because I know he and his son talk about money a lot and the things that his son likes to do. So Brian, I'm going to just jump right in with just some basics. Did you open an account for your son when he started school, or did he already have a traditional checking account?
He had a traditional checking account. We started like his freshman year of high school. So he already knew a little bit going in, but hadn't used it a whole lot.
Okay. So does he, so what are some of the tools he uses with that account, like alerts and mobile deposit? Does he have it linked in his wallet?
Yes,
like that?
He does have it linked in his wallet. He uses the card management. He has a credit card that he does use. He doesn't buy anything if it's not with his phone, if it's not with Apple Pay.
Okay.
He also uses the mobile deposit as well, which is really nice.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, does he use any like person-to-person, like Venmo or Zelle?
Yes, he uses Venmo all the time. I mean, that's incredible. That's all his friends do, is send money back and forth to each other for different things.
Do you have him put a spending plan together, or does he just spend and you just replenish the money?
No, he has a certain amount. He knows what that certain amount is. So we've gotten better. The first year he was living in a dorm, so he had a card and everything was that kind of managed in the dorm. The second year, he learned really fast that you can't eat at Taco Bell every night and get away with it. So yeah, he's ran out of money a couple times. We've talked about it, and then.
So does he just look at it like, this is the balances in my account, and he just transfers a certain amount each week, or what does he do to try to make sure that he doesn't overspend?
The most of it's done through his credit card. So he has
Okay.
an amount in his credit card that we say don't go over this amount.
No,
Yeah.
and then he just,
it's not his limit, but it's actual amount, and then
he just pays it off,
Pays it
and
off,
so he
yeah.
knows where he's at. Oh, that's really good, because at least there is some kind of budget to that.
Yeah.
Do you talk to him about like text and email posts and things like that are bogus? You know, there's the one going around with the toll road and things like that. And I know he drives around, so he could be like, oh, that could be me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's more on it than probably I am on certain things. Like he can identify a lot of AI stuff that he knows is fake. But but we do talk about, like, when we see things here at work, we definitely discuss that.
So when you think about what he's done in college and how he spends his money and what he's done, is there any advice that you gave him when he started, or your wife gave him when he started, that you think was like, hey, this was the most important advice we gave to him when it comes to how to manage his money or to protect himself or different things like that?
Well, the key thing was just to pay attention to it. I mean, he's a big concert goer, so sometimes he thinks that it just goes, and I think he's come to realize that, you're going to have to pick and choose sometimes, and that it's just not out there. And I think that's the biggest thing he's learned, especially his sophomore year, living in an apartment, having groceries, having different things, that, hey, I got to pay attention to this, as opposed to just mom and dad will, he came to the bank once. The second time, he doesn't get the advance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And, and I think the thing that you said there is that he's learned to pay attention. And, you talked about that he uses alerts and all these other things, and he has it in his credit card, so he knows what his balance is. And so that's really just part of it, is just being aware of what you're spending and how you're spending it and where you're spending it, right?
Yep. And he's grown up with it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian, for joining us. I think all the parents out there are going to appreciate the tips of how simple it can be to help your kids get started the right way financially at college.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, another one of my guests is Chris Ferguson, who has a son in college right now, and another one who's a couple of years away from going to college. So I think he's going to provide some interesting insights as well. So I'm going to jump right in and, kind of ask the first thing. Did you do something with a checking account before your first child went off to school, or did he already have one? What did you do with those things?
Yeah, definitely. He had a checking account that he was utilizing while he was in high school. I think maybe in his early teens, we got a checking account for him, and he got accustomed to using it, got accustomed to using a savings account in combination with the checking account. So he knew how to keep funds in savings and then how to transfer that to checking when he had spending and had things coming up, and had kind of gotten familiar with the tools attached to the checking account also, such as the mobile app and card controls and things like that, and was really familiar with it before he went off to college, which I think has been beneficial.
Did he happen to set up any alerts, or was he just pretty good about always looking at his account, but he didn't really need the alerts?
Yeah, I think that initially, I guess the account wasn't very active when he was in high school, so there wasn't as much of a need. But as he moved into college, we had some conversations and kind of talked about what expenses was going to be his responsibility and what expenses we were going to help him with. And at that point, he started utilizing the account quite a bit more. And he did get more familiar with alerts, set up a low balance alert, and that's actually helping him to kind of manage his funds throughout the week. And he still keeps funds in a savings account, and then when that low balance alert comes up, he thinks through and identifies whether he's going to have expenses coming up, and he transfers funds over. So the alerts have been beneficial. Card controls has actually been beneficial also. He had an experience last year where actually his wallet was stolen, and because he was familiar with card controls, he was able to go into the app and immediately put a block and turn off his card so that no fraudulent transactions were able to occur there as well. So it's been good for him to know about those tools and utilize those.
Now, like any college kid, I'm sure he uses Venmo or Zelle or Cash App or Apple Pay or something. Did you share any insights with him, or does he do anything to make sure that he's not getting taken advantage of there if he does use it?
Yeah, I think that definitely he and his friends will utilize Cash App, and there are some times where they will want to go somewhere off campus, and they'll share the cost of an Uber to get there, or or an Uber back to campus if needed and so forth. And so they'll send funds back and forth through Cash App to share some of those expenses. And we talked about how do you identify like who are you sending funds to? And there's several people with multiple names and so forth. And a tactic that someone shared with me is that you send a request to somebody instead of just sending funds. And so if you're sending a request for somebody to pay you, then they know that they're getting the request from the appropriate person that they're going to pay. If you send the request to the wrong person, they're just not going to pay you. You're not out funds. You haven't sent funds to somebody else. So that's one thing that kind of have learned a little bit there. But I think that he and his friends, they're typically they're close friends, and they're typically with each other when they're sending funds back and forth, and kind of are able to monitor and track those transactions.
So you talked a little bit about this already, about how he has a low balance alert and he kind of manages his spending. Does he, or did you, or does he just use his balance to kind of have kind of a spending limit, like on a weekly or monthly basis or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that's something that actually we had some conversations about, as I mentioned earlier, kind of what is his expenses that he's going to be expected to pay and what are we helping him with. And he's actually done a really good job of thinking out a school year in advance. There are some large expenses that he pays for that are kind of fixed expenses. And so he knows that he needs to have the funds for that saved up before the school year starts and have that set to the side. And he's done a good job of actually setting some funds aside and actually using a certificate of deposit, a CD, to kind of hold those funds and kind of completely separate those and restrict himself from getting access to that. And he knows that that certificate will renew or come due before the expense comes up. So he'll have those funds available there. But then also outside of those fixed expenses, he knows that anything beyond that are funds that he has available for going to athletic events, or if he chooses to dine out and not use his dining plan. And he does utilize those alerts, but also it does a really good job of kind of looking through and thinking through on a weekly basis kind of what funds I have. He knows that at the end of the semester, or actually as the semester goes along, if he utilizes all of those funds, he doesn't have funds. I mean, we're not giving him more funds. So he does a good job of kind of thinking through and kind of managing that and being alert of what he's spending before he spends it, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. As he went to school, did you talk about like a lot of the, to look for discounts, or was he maybe already doing this, or, all the student pricing, or is there anything that he's found that's like, really been good for him to help him make his money go farther?
Yeah, actually, before he started school, we found a couple of really good discounts. Apple has a good discount on all Apple products. And so if you need a laptop or something before you start school, there's a really good discount there. Microsoft Office, business classes require that he utilize Microsoft Office. So he was able to actually download Microsoft Office for free as a student through the program they have there. But then one thing that was actually kind of unexpected that we didn't expect to utilize was Uber Eats. I'm not a fan of food delivery services. I think there's a lot of excess costs, and it can be really expensive to have food delivered, and there's other ways to get food on campus. However, we found that there was a day where he was not feeling well. He had a really bad cold, and there wasn't a store open close by where he could get some cold medicine. So we actually found that we could order through Walgreens and have it delivered, order cold medicine through Walgreens, have it delivered through Uber Eats, and because of the student discounts that they offer to students on campus, there was no delivery fee. So within 20 minutes of ordering, he had his cold medicine, and there was no added cost for the Uber Eats. And so there are some unique things like that we found. And then also, he follows a lot of local restaurants on social media, and periodically they will have a free Friday or a free burrito day. And I'm sure there's long lines getting into those restaurants on those days when that's offering, but it's a good way to kind of get some extra perks outside of your normal dining hall and things like that, and not have a lot of headaches.
And he's going to be on social media anyway, so why not follow and get free things? That's really good. Your boys are probably a little different in how they handle things. Is there anything that you see that you might be doing differently, or what you've learned with the first one that you might explain to the second one or need to do differently with him?
Yeah, I think that they're definitely different personalities. My older son is very detailed. He plans ahead. He's very proactive, and he's very vigilant with funds, and he'll plan out his saving and spending and so forth there. My younger son, I know that we're going to have more conversations with, and we're going to have to give him additional tools. And so I think it's really just understanding how he's different and his mindset is going to be a little bit different when he gets to college, and he's not as detailed and not as proactive. And so we're going to have more conversations with him and really help him understand tools that are available to him and really outline a spending plan a little bit more than we did with our first son, and really just be a little bit more hands-on, I think, with him.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I think all of our listeners are really going to find a lot of value in what you said, and it's just common sense. And I think the one key is you just got to talk to them. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. I agree. Communication is key.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Joining me now is Kathleen Lupke, and most importantly, she has 2 boys in college this year. One is a senior, one is a sophomore. So she has a lot of great experience to talk about how they've managed their money and what they've done. So we're going to jump right in and start with just some of the basics, Kathleen. Did they have accounts before they started, or did you open accounts for them, or how did you handle like that kind of piece of it?
When they were around probably 12 and 14, we opened savings accounts and checking accounts for both of the boys. They were very excited to get started in banking. So we opened those up for them, and they've had those ever since.
Okay. So now, like, what tools did you, especially when they headed off to college, did you make sure they were using with the accounts, like alerts and mobile deposits and putting the card in their wallet and things like that?
Well, they're pretty tech savvy for their age, so they already knew to put it right in their wallet. That was kind of the first thing they wanted to do. And they use alerts so they know when they hit a certain balance. One of them checks it frequently, kind of assured me he didn't need the alerts, but he definitely set those up just in case. The other one definitely needs alerts. So they use the alerts, they use mobile deposit, and they pay with their phones. So they use the
almost
wallet.
everywhere, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Now they probably also use Venmo or Zelle or some other payment app.
They do. They use Venmo and Cash App.
Yeah. So have you talked to them about, how to make sure that they, aren't being scammed on who they're sending money to and things like that?
Yes, they have assured me that they always check the phone number, because I know Venmo verifies the last 4 digits. I'm not as familiar with Cash App, but the phone number, and they look at the profile picture.
Okay. Now here's one, with discounts and special prices that offered to students. Do you encourage them to seek those out, or did they do that on their own, or what kind of conversation did you have with that?
Well, I have always shown them how to look for deals, so they know to do that. They also know they'll hear from me. They'll get a text from me that alerts them when I find something I think they might like that would be a discount for them. They've also told me they watch for deals like with Spotify, ChatGPT. They get student discounts, Amazon Prime, and apparently MLB TV offers it.
See? So these are some good things that are really helpful depending upon their choices. Now, did you, any of them had any issues where they've had fraud or any transactions on their account?
Yes. One of them had a transaction that they got a text alert and realized it was not theirs. So, I got a phone call and they shut that down right away. And then he also last year had his wallet stolen. He was able to go into the app and freeze the account so that nothing else could come out. And then it was interesting because he was watching his account after that and he could see charges get denied. So it was a good thing that he was on top of it and froze it right away.
And that's one thing that we don't talk enough about. There's all the fraud and we're worried about everything being stolen online. But someone could actually just steal your wallet and take your card with you if you have it in there. So that's a very good point. And I do want to bring that up. Your kids are both at Bloomington, but they did keep their accounts that they had here that they started with. You don't have to open up an account in the college town they're in, correct?
Correct. They can do everything virtually. So they stayed with their accounts that they opened as teenagers.
Yes. Okay. Any other things that you think parents who, I think one of the key things is that you haven't said, but you guys have great conversations about money and you're able to have conversations and you're not doing it in an accusatory tone. You're doing it about think about this, think about that, which is probably key, right?
That is key. Yes, it helps to have those conversations and to not assume that everything's going as it should be. I mean, they need us still, and we can always share insights that'll be valuable to them and help them to be better savers, better spenders. That'll help their future.
Well, Kathleen, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, joining me now is Mike Sen, and the reason why I'm having him on, because we've had several guests on here, all with different experiences. He has two daughters, one that's already graduated and one that's in college. So we want to kind of get what he shared with them as they went to college and maybe what was different between one and the other, because that's one of the things that we've learned is no two kids are the same when it comes to money. So some basic questions, Mike. Did you have an checking account for them before they started school, or did you get it when they went to school?
We did. We actually did set up a traditional checking account, but that was right around like age 17. We did that. But even before that, one thing that was really helpful with both girls is we set up a green light debit card for them. And that was kind of a nice training ground on how to manage money. And so by the time we kind of got to age 17 and we opened up the traditional account, they already kind of had this, they kind of knew what to expect. And so, they were able to go into college and, operate their account and set up a budget and kind of do things responsibly.
Did either or both of them use any of like the payment apps like Venmo or Zelle or Cash App, things like that? And what did you try to help them with that to make sure that they were doing the right things with that and not getting susceptible to fraud or something like that?
Got it. Yeah. We narrowed it down just to Venmo. We got away from, we didn't want them to have too many options right there. And it just seemed like Venmo was the best one for them. It seems like that's been really helpful with family and friends, and it was easy to set up. I did like the fact that, they see the history of people that they've Venmoed in the past or that have Venmoed them, as well as like there were some safeguards on making sure that when you set up someone new that you're confirming that, yes, you are indeed sending money to the correct person. So it just seemed like it was a little safer. Fraud is everywhere. So you've got to be, really on the offensive and making sure that you are, actively looking at stuff. And if something looks weird, I just told them, like, take a screenshot of it and send it to me, text it to me so I can see it. Don't click on the link, but that's, if that's at work, that's at home, it's over on the phone. It was kind of, you just never know. So really just talking about it proactively seemed to kind of, pay off.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So did you talk about like all the discounts that are available to them, and what were some of the ones that you found were most important for them to use while they were on campus or are on campus?
Yeah. My oldest is pretty frugal. So she's always looking for sales and discounts and coupons. And she's actually the one who really, she kind of taught me on that. I didn't realize that there were that many student discounts on campus. So she said, Dad, a lot of times it's just a matter of asking, like if you're going to a restaurant or what have you. But one thing that jumped out at me, I didn't know this, is streaming services. So like Hulu, Peacock, and there's quite a few out there that, if you're a student, you can get a reasonable discount. So I know that she takes advantage of a couple of those, watches her shows, and she's not, paying what normal people would pay. And because those streaming services can add up.
Oh, yes, definitely. Did you encourage both of them to have spending plans, or how did you do that to make sure that they managed their money and had money to last all semester or all year?
Yeah, that's let's just say the youngest she's still getting her sea legs, right? So, but she, they both understand the concept of a budget, and the oldest seemed to grasp that when we kind of helped her narrow it down to rent when she was living off campus, rent, utilities, food, clothes and entertainment, and then a cushion. And so what was really important that at least we stressed is you need to have a decent cushion in checking just in case. Because if she's running her debit card, you just don't want to go too thin. But anything over that, then push it out to savings and ignore it. And so was trying to set up those behaviors, Andy, that was going to not only help her stay on track, but also was going to give her the ability to maybe put a nice little nest egg away. And so that worked.
Thank you so much. And your story brings a lot of other concepts to light. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all of that. So I kind of want to sum up what we've heard from all these different parents and maybe add in a few things that we didn't get a chance to cover. So you need to make sure they have an account that they can move money around in. We want to make sure that they know how to use the mobile app and how to do mobile deposits and different things like that. And also making sure they know why they need alerts on their financial accounts. Talk about how they would protect Venmo and Zelle. Making sure they're on top of things. You don't want them to have any fees, even fees from the school or parking fees, things like that. You want to make sure they're learning to find ways to save. We've talked about the spending plan that they need every week so they don't overspend, how to take advantage of free entertainment and activities, and making sure they limit extra activities so they don't overspend just because they are doing too much. And then talk to them about fraud and identity theft when they're logging on to public Wi-Fi spots, opening links in text or emails or on social media, and making sure they just don't overshare on social media, and why it's so important to have really strong passwords that they don't replicate across all the places that they're going to be putting passwords. And then just this whole thing about strong money habits, comparison shopping, taking advantage of student discounts, and, having that 24-hour waiting period for any unplanned purchases. Now, you've heard from the parents, I'm giving you a list of a few things to consider. With these things, your college student should be prepared and ready to focus on having fun and learning and not have to worry about money issues. Because as a parent, that's what we all are hoping happens while they're at college. That's all for this episode of the Smarter Money Life podcast. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found our discussion helpful and inspiring. You can find more resources on the Smarter Money Life page at forumcu.com. Remember, making smart financial decisions is a journey, and every step you take brings you closer to your financial dream. Be sure to tune in next time for more tips and insights on managing your money. Until then, stay smart and financially savvy.